This is part one in a movie series to show you how to create live AR images. And here's an example of what is achievable and what you should be able to do by the end of this series. As you can see, you can even work with any kind of movie with sound as well. It looks pretty cool. So the first thing we need to do is open Xcode, and we're going to create a new Xcode project. Now normally it would go to a single view app, but we're going to choose an augmented reality app. So once you've selected that from the options, you can click next, and we need to come up with a project name. I'm just going to call mine Live Picture AR, and the other settings here are just going to stay the same. So untick include unit tests and UI tests. Now I need to choose somewhere to save, so I'm just going to choose my desktop. You might have somewhere that you prefer, and I'm not going to use a Git repository either. One of the things that you will need to do is install the app to an iPhone or iPad, and you'll need to set up a team to do this. Now I actually have a video that explains this in my YouTube channel, and I'll include a link below so that you can follow that guide. Once you've got a team set up, let's just hit play and see what we get straight away from this template. That would take a little bit to load, and we might see some errors come up on the screen, but that's all okay at this stage. Once it's loaded on your device, you should have an augmented reality world in front of you, and somewhere on there that you should see a plane floating in space, similar to the image I have here. Stop that from running, and we'll start having a look at the template file that we're going to edit. First of all, I want to go down and have a look at the main storyboard where we would normally design our app. And what you can actually see in there is that we actually have this scene view added for us. And if we open the viewcontroller.swift file, we can see our viewcontroller class definition. And we've also got this extra bit which has got a delegate on it. And we also have the IB outlet for the scene view already created. There's lots of other bits of code in there and functions that we're going to use. Some of it's been commented out, and there's lots of comments on there to kind of explain what some of the AR functionality we have available to us. So let's start editing this file. First of all, we're going to actually remove the view will appear and view will disappear. We don't actually need them for what we're doing. And because we are not needing an aeroplane anymore, we can delete that line, which is basically adding the aeroplane to our scene. I'll just get rid of this comment here. I don't want that. And now I want to set up my empty scene, which is basically the world around us. So I'm just going to use the SCN scene, open bracket, close bracket, because there's nothing in there. And then what I need to do is set up a session. Let me just delete that. A scene view session run. So it's basically what's going to happen when our session runs. Now, when it auto completes that as soon as I do the open bracket, and this session wants us to add a configuration, which is basically going to define, well, what's happening during the session. So in this case, we actually want to be tracking images. So let's say define one. So we'll say let config equal, and we're looking for a function called AR image tracking. Let's just let that load. Image tracking configuration. And we'll create an instance of that. And then to that config file, I'm just going to make sure that we are setting that up. So config.maximum number of tracked images equals 1. And we're just saying to the config, you only need to look for one image at a time. We'll change this later as we add more images, but it just keeps our code nice and tidy. So before going any further, let's add an image to our project. So I'm going to go across to my assets area, and I'm going to hit this plus button down here. And I'm going to add a new AR resource group. And this is really important that we do it this way. Now we just need to locate our image to drag over. Here's the set of images that I've got. I've just got them in my downloads folder. And these images are available via a link below. Now I'm going to drag over my bird image. And I'm just going to make sure that I drop it on the AR resources folder. Once that's on there, I just choose it, and I need to go to the properties area of the image and First of all, it'd be good to rename it. This will be important later that we get matching names for our image and movie. And I'm also going to change the width of our image to 6.5 inches. This corresponds to the A4 physical size of the paper that we're actually going to be looking for in real life. Now in our code, we want to refer to the resource folder as a set of images that our config is looking for. So we'll do if let images equal, and we need to say AR reference image. So the image we're going to use dot reference images, and it's going to be asking for a particular group, which is our AR resources, which is what we named our AR resources inside our assets, and our bundle we can leave at nil. Now, what are we going to do if there are images in there? Okay, we're going to set our config dot tracking images equal to images. Now, if you haven't seen an if let statement before, this might seem a little bit confusing, but basically what we're saying is the only way that the value of images actually gets changes is if there are images inside our resource group. It's kind of a double checking system. And now that we've done that, we can actually just add our config to the scene views.session.run and pass the config to that. So basically our app now has the function to find any image that's in our AR resources, which is the size A4. But what we need to do is do something when it does find it. Now, part of our template are some extra functions that we get through this thing called an AR scene view delegate. And if we scroll down to the bottom of our code, we'll actually see the functions that we need to use, plus also this extra one here that we have the option of choosing. Let's uncomment that, because what this function will allow us to do is return a node based on an anchor point that is found by the app. And we can define that anchor point, and we're going to do that now. So what we're going to do is use an if let again, because we want to ensure that our anchor is going to be of a particular type. So let's say if let image anchor, because this is where we're going to put our image, is equal to anchor, which is one of the parameters passed to us in this function. And we want to make sure that it is a particular type. So we use this as question mark to force it to look for a particular type. And in this case, it is an AR image anchor. Now, because we're using an AR reference image for our session's configuration, it basically means when the session recognizes an image, it automatically adds to its list of anchors an AR image anchor for each detected image. So functionally what we're doing here is creating an image anchor for every time the app detects one of our images in the scene. So now we've got our anchor point, I have to decide what sort of node I want to add. And in this particular case, I want to add a node that's called a plane. So we have to start setting up some of the properties for that. And the first thing that would be good to do is get the physical dimensions. So let's define a variable called physical size. And we're going to grab some properties from our image anchor itself, because that's what we've actually found in the scene. Now, in this case, it's going to be the size of the A4 piece of paper inside our scene. Now let's start defining our plane. So I'm going to say let plane equals SCN plane, which is a scene plane. And I just need to add some sizes to that plane. So we've got our physical size, and we're going to say physical size dot width and our physical size dot height. And that's pulling that from the image anchor. So now we've defined our plane. We want to actually set a node for that plane. So I'm going to say let plane node equal, and I'm basically creating a particular node, and I'm going to say the geometry of this node is plane. Now what I can actually do is add that plane node to our node that we're actually assigning when we see the image. So we say node.addChildNode and add the plane node to that. So now we basically just need to build and run our app and see what sort of state we're in. So if everything's gone well, we should see something like this where we've got our image, but the plane that we've created is actually sitting vertically through our image rather than laying horizontally flat. So we need to fix that. We're going to change one of the plane node's properties. It's called Euler Angles, and basically this is the orientation of the plane node in space, and it's done in radians. So we have to apply a little bit of a formula. If you're good at your maths, you can actually figure this out maybe. But basically, so we're going to say plane node.eulerangles.x, because we're changing the x coordinates, is going to be minus pi, and that's a like a property that we have available, divided by 2.0. And we're choosing 2.0 to keep it in a double. Now let's build and run and let's see what happens. So we should see something like this where the paper's laying nice and flat over our image. This brings us to the end of part 1 of this movie series, and I look forward to helping you in the next episode.